This is an NBC News special report. Here's Hallie Jackson.
We are coming on the air with breaking news. The first remarks from President Biden on the death of former President Jimmy Carter. The Carter Center announcing the longest living former president died at the age of 100 today at his home in Georgia, surrounded by his family. President Biden, for his part, is in the U.S. Virgin Islands right now for the New Year's holiday. With tonight's remarks, the first of many over what will be weeks of tributes for former President Carter, both in his home state of Georgia as well as in Washington, D.C., where President Biden is expected to deliver a eulogy at a state funeral. President Biden is taking the podium, taking the lectern in the Virgin Islands as we speak. Let's take a moment and listen in.
You know, this is a sad day, but it brings back an incredible amount of good memories. Today, America and the world, in my view, lost a remarkable leader. He was a statesman and humanitarian. And Jill and I lost a dear friend. I've been hanging out with Jimmy Carter for over 50 years, it dawned on me. And I had countless conversations over those years. I always would be proud to say that he used to kid me about it, that I was the first national figure to endorse him in 1976 when he ran for president. There was an overwhelming reason for it, his character. What I find extraordinary about Jimmy Carter, though, is that millions of people all around the world, all over the world, feel they lost a friend as well, even though they never met him. And that's because Jimmy Carter lived a life measured not by words, but by his deeds. Just look at his life, his life's work. He worked to eradicate disease, not just at home, but around the world. He forged peace, advanced civil rights, human rights, promoted free and fair elections around the world. He built housing for the homeless with his own hands. And his compassion and moral clarity lifted people up and changed lives and saved lives all over the globe. Jimmy Carter was just as courageous in his battle against cancer as he was in everything in his life. Cancer was a common bond between our two families, as in many other families. And our son Bo died. When he died, Jimmy and Rosalynn were there to help us heal. Jimmy knew the ravages of the disease too well. He lost his father, his brother, his sisters to this terrible disease. So when Jimmy was diagnosed, we did our best to comfort him. We met with him down in Plains. We met with him. Anyway, we talked and shared our beliefs that as a nation, we have the talent. We have the talent and the resources to one day end cancer as we know it, if we make the investments. He believed that like I do. I'll always cherish having seen Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter together. Theirs was a love affair of the ages. While we'll miss them both dearly, I do take some solace, and our kids were saying it, that they're united once again. We're going to remain forever in our hearts, but they're together again. The entire Carter family, on behalf of the world, the whole nation, we send our whole heartfelt sympathies and gratitude. Our gratitude for sharing President Carter with us for so many years. You know, Jimmy Carter stands as a model of what it means to live a life of meaning and purpose, a life of principle, faith, and humility. His life dedicated to others. You know, he's like my dad. He thought that, he said, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about dignity, your dignity. About being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, everything's going to be okay. He believed, as I do, and many as you do, that that's absolutely possible. It's within our grasp to do that. It's not that hard. In his life, he served the nation in the Navy. He led the state of Georgia. He became president and a beloved statesman all over the world. But to know his core, you need to know he never stopped being a Sunday school teacher at that Baptist church in Plains, Georgia. Today's world, some look at Jimmy Carter and see a man of a bygone era. With honesty and character, faith and humility, it mattered. But I don't believe it's a bygone era. I see a man not only of our times, but for all times. Someone who embodied the most fundamental human values we can never let slip away. Although sometimes it seems like it is. Or we may never see his like again. we'd all do well to try to be a little more like Jimmy Carter. You know, my mom, you've heard me say this before, used to say, bravery lives in every heart, and someday it'll be summoned. Every time it was summoned, he stepped up. Every time, politically, personally, morally. And, you know, everything. The one thing I admired most about him, he thought and believed, and he really did believe this, and I do as well, that everybody deserves an even shot. No guarantees, just a shot. Everybody deserves a shot. And, you know, he gave an awful lot of people a chance. So, as I said, I was an admirer. I consider myself a friend. Kept in touch with him, and his son, I was going to tell you a story his son told me, but that would be inappropriate. Maybe he'll tell you, but about I think he's happy. I think he's happy with Roseland. So.
Mr. President, as you think about your post-presidency, is there anything about Jimmy Carter's time after leaving office that inspires you for the years ahead?
Yeah, never give up hope. Never give up hope. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. So much negativism out there. I know you're tired of hearing me say it over the last 4 years. But folks, there's nothing beyond our capacity. Nothing beyond our capacity. If we do it together. And I mean it. I mean it. And he believed it.
Sir, what is your fondest memory of Jimmy Carter?
I have a number of them. I guess maybe my fondest memory of Jimmy Carter was when he grabbed me by the arm and said, I need you to help me in my campaign. And I said, I've only been around a couple of years, Mr. Governor. He said, no, it'll make a difference. I said, I'm not sure it will. He said, no, it will. When I endorsed him for president, I told him why I was endorsing him, and that it was not only his policies, but his character, his decency, the honor he communicated to everyone. And but he was also very, very, he and Roseland were very kind to Jill and me when we lost our son, Beau. They were there for us. And I don't know, it's, I think that what Jimmy Carter is an example of is just simple decency. Simple decency. And I think that's what the rest of the world looks to America for.
So what members of the family have you spoken to?
I think I've spoken to all the children. Maybe some I just got off the phone with. I think there were, I don't know how many on the phone, but I think, and I've spoken to some of the friends of the family. They're helping with the services, and my team is working with his family and others to see to it that he is remembered appropriately here in the United States and around the world. There's a process we're going through that will take a little time to set up this. I announced earlier today we're going to do a major service in Washington, D.C. on behalf of him. But that's a formal procedure that's underway. So I'm sure we start talking a lot to the family between now and my main contact is Chip.
Is there anything that President Trump to take from President Carter?
Decency. 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 Everybody deserves a shot. Everybody. Can you imagine Jimmy Carter walking by someone who needs something and just keep walking? Can you imagine Jimmy Carter referring to someone by the way they look or the way they talk? I can't. I can't. You know, I think the end of the deal here is that one of the reasons why we're looked to by the rest of the world, for the bulk of our nationhood, we've laid out what our values are. We've said what we believe. It's not just in the Declaration, we hold these truths to be self-evident, but there's a feeling. The rest of the world looks to us. and he was worth looking to. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
President Biden there making remarks tonight on the death of former President Jimmy Carter from St. Croix from the Virgin Islands, where he is spending this holiday week with his family. I want to bring in our White House correspondent, Mike Memoli, who is traveling with the president. And you heard President Biden reflecting on his memories there, talking about the decency of Jimmy Carter and looking ahead, too, to the many commemorations that will happen as President Carter is laid to rest, specifically, as he noted, a formal process with that state funeral in the days to come.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. You know, any one of the 45 men who have become members of that President's Club either already has or develops a relationship with the other people who are part of that club. And what we just heard from President Biden just now was something unique, reflecting the fact that he and the former president had an extensive relationship going back nearly a half century, dating back to when, as he recalled there, he was one of the first lawmakers outside the state of Georgia to endorse Jimmy Carter in his bid for president in 1976. Those remarks that the president made, both the scripted and the often moments when he went off of script, speak to almost more to his personal character, the qualities that made him such a notable former president as to what he did during his time in office. And it's hard to separate this moment for President Biden, who has just over 3 weeks left in office, with this unique time in our history as we prepare for the historic inauguration of President-elect and former President Donald Trump. Biden clearly in this moment thinking that the qualities of decency and character are some that are richly needed at this moment in time. Biden has indeed ordered a state funeral for President Carter. He will, as he has said in the past, likely deliver the eulogy for the former president. And we are hearing as well from other members, Hallie, of that President's Club. In a long statement, former President Obama reflecting on the Carter role as Sunday school teacher, saying that he promised Americans he would always tell the truth, and he did. He also was an example of decency. Former President George W. Bush saying that President Carter dignified the office, but also set an example for service for the country. And President Trump saying that he may have disagreed with him philosophically and politically, but he respected his commitment to the country. Hallie.
Mike Memoli, live for us there at St. Croix. Mike, thank you very much. I want to bring it back to the mainland United States, where NBC News correspondent Priya Sridhar is joining us now from outside the Carter Center in Atlanta, Georgia. And Priya, already tonight, I understand people have come to pay their respects to Jimmy Carter as they have learned in just the last few hours about his death.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. We're seeing people coming out here to the Carter Center. This is where the Carter Center and the Carter Presidential Library exists, placing flowers and candles and a chalkboard that says, "We love you, President Carter." We're seeing that memorial growing. We're hearing from, of course, world leaders. But, you know, as we've discussed, President Carter really was a son of Georgia, and he was really beloved by the people here in Georgia. Before he made his way to the White House, he was relatively unknown outside of the state of Georgia. And, you know, he's from a very small town, Plains, Georgia, which has a population of about 500 people. It's 3 hours away from Atlanta. And I have gotten an opportunity tonight to speak to some members of the Carter Foundation who are working out the logistics for those funeral arrangements. They have told me that they're expecting his body to come from Plains here to Atlanta, and there will be public observances both here in Atlanta, in Washington, D.C., before his body is taken, of course, to Washington, D.C. for a state funeral in the National Cathedral. But ultimately, Hallie, he will be buried back in Plains, which is where he was born and raised.
Priya Sridhar live for us there outside the Carter Center in Atlanta. Priya, thank you very much. That does it for us for this NBC News special report. But we will, of course, have a lot more coverage of the life, the legacy, the remembrances for former President Jimmy Carter on NBCNews.com, online, on our streaming channel, NBC News Now, and tomorrow morning on Today. We'll see you then. I'm Hallie Jackson. For all of us here at NBC News, thanks for watching. Good night.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.